Hello everybody who is willing to do another sewing tutorial with me. I've just bought one of the newest magazines from Burda. It's the Fall-Winter Burda Easy Sewing, an easy one, and the dress is also easy. It's a jersey dress. You can choose a very soft, thin one, or you can choose a slightly thicker material in jersey, depending on how much you like to freeze and how much you like to keep yourself warm. This dress you can make with a pattern from this Burda magazine, or if you have a nice top pattern already, you can just as well use it and do the sewing as I will show it to you anyway. So here I show you my parts that you need for this dress. I got my front part. The official front is slightly cut higher, similar to the back piece here, but I like it lower down a bit. That's why I just took some more out from the pattern out and made it lower in the front. It's cut here in the edge, it's slide over, and you need a little facing behind this on the back where you put an interfacing with the ironing on. And I already cleaned it off with my overlock on this edge. So this is prepared for stitching on. The same with the back. The back also you need a little interfacing piece with some extra fleece stuck on the back with the ironing, and you need to finish that edge off already as well. Besides that, you need two little sleeves. It's not a long sleeve on this one. It's similar to the dress or the top I'm just wearing here. It's only a 3/4 sleeve. It's a relatively short one. And as you maybe see here, my material has quite a pattern. I of course tried to get my pattern to match everywhere. That looks nicer, as if I would have a really messed up cutting here done. The actual skirt on the bottom will have pockets, so I did cut already 2 pairs of pockets here, and you need two big pieces. They're cut just in a right angle, so in case if you would use some top pattern that you have but you don't have the skirt, all you have to do is take the widths which you like to have on the skirt and cut for the front and for the back exactly the same right angle one. This particular one is for my size. I'm a 38/40, and Burda suggests on that size to cut the skirt in the width 60 centimeters and in the length 44.5 centimeters. And you need one for the back and you need one for the front, but they're exactly the same size. And you will need for the waist part a 1.5 centimeter elastic band, which will be pulled in a little tunnel that we will be creating while we're doing this, while we're sewing this. Well, that's about all you need for the preparation. So why don't let's get started here.
I will first of all start by finishing off the neck part. It doesn't matter if you start with the back piece first or with the front piece, as it's exactly the same work. So I take my little extra piece that I cut in the shape of my neck, and I added, in my case here, only 5 millimeters. Of course, it's your decision if you would like to have 1 centimeter that you cut there. Then of course you might have to later on cut it a little bit thinner or smaller. Now, as you can see, I already marked in the middle of my back. I put a little clip in, so I know that's where I got to put these two parts together. And don't pull this round straight to sew. Leave it lying round on your machine and then slowly guide it into the machine while you're turning the material around. So that's where I'm in the middle right now, and I continue with my 5 millimeter seam that I cut on all the way to the end. Then I turn this piece around and I will stitch on my little piece that I just added. Right there I stitch over approximately 1 to 2 millimeters. Make sure that you pull the two materials apart, and the seam now is lying towards your little slip that you added onto there. But that makes it very easy now afterwards to iron, and it automatically lies really nice and flat. So we do exactly the same to the front piece. There as well I marked the middle in the front and the middle from my little slip that I'm stitching on. And as well here I only added 5 millimeters seam, because that means I do not need to cut anything out. And there you see my cut. This is the middle from my front. And I continue with my 5 millimeter seam, going towards the middle first, and don't pull it straight, leave it round and turn it while the machine is stitching. Turn it into the circle you got there. Otherwise you might stretch the material out too much. Although we have an interfacing there ironed on, but it's better to stitch it that way anyway. So here we do exactly the same as well. We're lying the little seam towards our little part that we just stitched on, and bit by bit we go along and stitch this down. Keep on checking that your seam is really lying towards the little piece. Pull the seam apart so it's really lying very well there for you. And continue all the way to the end. When you look at this now, it's already looking beautiful, as if it's totally finished. But I go to my ironing board now to give it a press. So here, with a little bit of steam, I iron this nice and down again, so it's really beautiful for my next job prepared. That's the front, and you can see it, how nicely that looks. And I do exactly the same, of course, with my back part from my neck piece here. A little bit of steam, a little bit of pressure, and it's exactly as I would like to have it for my next job. And I go back to my sewing machine now. Now you will see that that dress actually does not have a real shoulder part. So lie the front and the back piece towards each other with the proper side facing you, and lie the front part over the back. You got to measure and look on the pattern from Burda, which you might have bought or will buy it, how much they suggested to lie or to overlay these two parts with each other. In my case, this is 6 centimeters, so I'm just putting that there in position. Exactly 6 centimeters, these two parts are overlapping each other. And make sure you really took your front piece and not the back piece, because that wouldn't look right. Then we wouldn't need to make this nice curve there. It would look a bit more boring if you do it that way. So again, I take the front piece, put it on top of the back piece, measure my 6 centimeters, and now I just take this under my machine and just stitch over the edge, very small, about 5 millimeters only, because my next seam, when the sleeve goes in there, is also only 5 millimeters, as I didn't allow more for my seam there. So just hold this there in position, and that is practically your shoulder. That's how it's meant to be done, with this big wide cut open on the neck. And you see the inside is all finished off because of the way we've done this before. So we got to do exactly the same on the other side. I put my back piece down, I take my front piece, put it on top, measure my 6 centimeters, overlap these two pieces exactly by 6 centimeters. I check again to make sure it's exactly right, and I'm just stitching in a very small seam these two shoulder parts, let's call them like that, onto each other. So that means my neck is totally finished, including my so-called shoulders. So we have to look at the next job, which is stitching the sides together. So here I am on my overlock, and I will first of all, with my 5mm overlock seam, close both sides of the top. Put evenly edge on edge. If, of course, you may be considered a wider seam than me, then you have to stitch it in that width off. But I only allowed 5mm, as I like to have very thin seams inside this dress, as you would have in a t-shirt as an example, or a very soft material jersey dress as well. If you look inside there, you'll find they're usually 5, 6 or 7mm wide, depending on which machineries the factories have. So that's my second side already from my top part here. And next I will take the sleeves, put this on the side, and I hang my next sleeve onto it, and exactly the same I have to do is close the sleeve up. Already on this sleeve I also cleaned off the bottom of the sleeves with the overlock earlier on, because it's nicer to do that while the part is not stitched up, because then you got it lying nicely and flat, and it's so much easier than if you would have to go around the sleeve and keep on turning it under the machine. It's getting a bit tight. Here's my second sleeve, and I do exactly the same. I just close that seam with my 5mm overlock, which I allowed at my cutting as well, and not any more than that. And that's so far what I got to do on this machine at this particular moment. And I got to go back onto my normal sewing machine. Now I start putting the sleeves in. So look at all your seams, where you got the front, where you got the back. And first of all, take your top part, put them underneath the side seams so it's facing you, and you got the left side from the material facing you. Now I just take the wrong sleeve first, because if you have a very good pattern, you will find that just after the side seam there is a little cut. That cut tells you it's the front. Now, this particular sleeve I picked up is the wrong one, because you can see if I'm putting those parts together, my cut is on the other side. So that is the wrong sleeve. So put it flat down like that. Take the sleeve and put the side seam with the seam from the sleeve together. They got to be right there together. And now if you look, you find the cut from the sleeve and the cut from the top, and they're together. They're evenly in line. So if the material is very thin, like mine here, I put both seams towards the back and the right in the same direction. But if the material is a thick one, I will probably put each seam to a different side so it doesn't get so thick underneath the arm. And my seam on here is 5mm again, as I mentioned before. So I just put this under the machine now. I put my seams exactly on top of each other, and I start directly there on the seam. I'm putting the top part on the bottom down, and I'll leave it lying in the curve the way it's cut. I'm not trying to pull my top part straight. As you can see, it's lying towards the right now, and that's the way I will stitch it. I will not pull it straight. Leave it like that and go to your first point and turn the material into the machine the way in the speed you're sewing and the way it wants to go in, and it's round. Now, This is so important. If you got to have at least one cut. In a very, very good pattern, you will have more than one cut. And the more cuts you have for putting the sleeve in position, the better the pattern is and the better your sleeve will fit. But on this Burda one, we only have that one on the bottom. Of course, we have the seam on the bottom, and we have one cut in the sleeve on the top, which is exactly the shoulder part. Now, as we don't really have a shoulder seam here, but you will see it on your pattern where they marked that your shoulder is actually, because these two parts together made the shoulder, but it's 6 centimeters, as I said. So your mark on the part on the top is approximately on 3 centimeters. And that's where this cut from the sleeve has got to go. It's got to fit right there. That's the only way how you will get this sleeve in correctly. So just keep on going. And if you think you would like to have another cut, you could, as an example, lie this bottom piece together. Here you can see how much width you still have, which has to go into this part. And on this bottom part, you can make yourself another little mark right somewhere, anywhere there, because on that part underneath the sleeve there, underneath your arm practically, there's never any width. So you could put yourself another cut there, so you know that part's got to be nice and straight. And all my other widths, I got to get in the top in there. And that is when a sleeve will really nicely go around your arm. And you can see a very good sleeve as an example on a gents sacco, on a jacket. Those sleeves, they usually have 6 or even 8 points for putting them carefully in, and then they really fall and they roll around. That's the right way to say it. Yeah, they roll around the arm, and it's a perfect match to pull shoulder pads in and so on. Okay, our first sleeve is in. Check it to make sure you got no anything funny stitched in. Make sure the seam is straight, flat, and so that you enjoy it. That's what we need to look. For me, this looks all right, so I decide I continue with the next one. Again, I'm just looking practically at my side seam here. My left side is facing me from the material. Now my little front cut is there to the left. The same on my sleeve. I put right on right together, and again I start on that seam underneath the arm. No matter which kind of sleeve you stitch in, never ever start in any other position than underneath the arm. You would never put a sleeve in a coat and a jacket in a dress and starting somewhere on the top or in the front or on the back part. You always start stitching him in underneath the arm. Don't ever forget that. It's very important, because otherwise you do get a funny fit for that. It wouldn't be right. So here I'm coming towards my shoulder already. I know from the other side, my little cut that I have in the sleeve is approximately lying in the middle on 3 centimeters of my 6 centimeter overlapping from my two shoulder parts, as we call them shoulder parts now. And I continue. And always when I stop, that's also very important. Always when you stop and lift your foot, leave your needle stuck in the material. Otherwise, it moves over, and you get on the right side, you will see like a little corner, like an edge, which you don't want, which wouldn't be right, which wouldn't be good. So I'm almost at the end here. And when both sleeves are in, I later on, to finish them off, I have to clean them off on my overlock again. But that's for that at the moment just fine for me. So here I am on my overlock now again, and I start to prepare to do my pockets. As you can see, the pattern from Burda is made that way that the top of the pocket will go inside that seam where we will have the tunnel with the elastic band in. I already cleaned with the overlock the edges of the pocket pieces off, And now I will stitch them on with my 5mm seam with my overlock again, although I allowed 1 centimeter on this particular seam, but you will see later on why I'm doing it this way. So you got to see, if you have a pattern like me, which is the top of your skirt part, which we have here, then put this pocket piece right on the edge, also on the top of the edge, and do all 4. As you got 2 pockets, that means you got 4 parts for the pocket. And each time I start on the top sewing, that means at the moment my pocket piece is underneath, and the next one I will start, it will be on the top lying again, because it's in pairs, of course, but I on purpose start always on the top, because that's where my 2 pocket pieces, my pocket and my part from the skirt, is starting together there on the top. That makes it much easier, and I don't need to measure out how or in which position this pocket would have to start. And I continue all the way through with my overlock at the same time. That means my edge is nicely cleaned off already. So 1 more pocket piece I got to stitch on. Again, I'm putting this in position. I'm lying it on the top where my later on my tunnel will be, and I just go down that edge, not only stitching the pocket with the skirt part together, I also clean off the edge to all the way to the hem on the bottom right away. That makes the next job very easy and nice for me. I'm just adding this piece so my machine doesn't unthread. I always like to do that. Back on my Pfaff sewing machine, I will continue first of all with the pockets. That means, first of all, I stitch over this seam. I stitch it down, the same what I did on the top when we did the cut out from the neck. I'm putting the seam towards the pocket piece and stitching it over by 1 or 2 millimeters. That means my seam is lying really flat. You couldn't iron it flatter than the way I stitched that. And I got to do this, of course, to all 4 pocket pieces for my 2 pockets. That was the number 2. You can see how nicely and even that looks, and it lies flat perfectly as ironed practically, and that will never go out of position. The same we do on this pocket, and 1 more to do, and I'm stitching it on the pocket piece while the little seam is lying towards the pocket piece. All right, now we got to put those 2 pieces right side on top of each other to continue with this pocket. So I'm measuring now from the top how far I want to close this piece on the top. I'm picking this side first so you see the contrast a little bit better. You see my 2 seams, I put them exactly on top of each other now. And as I mentioned before, I allowed a 1 centimeter seam here, which means I will stitch 5 millimeters next to my seam that I have there for my overlock. But first I got to measure how far down I want to close this part, as in this top part also my tunnel will come, and I got to know how far do I want to leave my pocket open. So I'm measuring here 4.5 centimeters. You can also go down on 5, that's up to you. And from the bottom up, I'm measuring approximately 3 to from where on I want to close the pocket there. Okay, that's no problem. I'm putting exactly the seams on top of each other, the top edge in one position, and I can look underneath again to make sure my 2 seams are exactly on top of each other. And I stitch to where I marked it as far as I want to do this little seam. Now I'm putting this down all the way along where the pocket is. And I look for my next mark that I did there. Make sure both pieces are lying really flat on top of each other. The seam is on top of each other. There's my little mark. And do a good back and forward stitching. That is also important because you don't want that seam to open up later when you put your hands in the pocket. And all the way down to the bottom, 1 centimeter seam, as that is what I allowed for my seam. Now you see already how this pocket comes, and I just start on the top and I make it about a 1.5 centimeter seam, because pocket seams are usually not a centimeter or smaller. They're usually 1.5 to 2 centimeters. And I really leave them exactly on top of each other, flat lying, and I stitch all the way to my seam that I've just done there when I closed that seam up. All right. Here you can see the pocket already now. Well, you can't see it, but it's there because my pattern really goes nicely there together. And now you got to decide, as both parts from the skirt are exactly the same, and this pocket you could put in either way now, but you got to make this decision which one should be your front, and that's the direction you got to lie this pocket now, and just stitch it on the top so it's held in position. And that also means later this pocket will not fall down inside. It stays exactly in that position when you're wearing the dress. So we do exactly the same to the other pocket. I put exactly my seams on top of each other. I measure again here, which was the measurement I used from the top, and for the bottom it was 4.5 in the top, which I measured, and 3 on the bottom. I'll make myself a tiny little point there. I put my seams exactly on top of each other. I do a big back and forward stitching. Check again that my seam is on top of the other seam. A continuation this has got to be, and I stitch to my marking that I did there. I go on farther down, again put my seams on top of each other, lie both pieces really flat, that I got no widths in one of them. That would not be clever. And I start on this other point that I just marked there and close that seam all the way down to the bottom by 1 centimeter. That's my bottom of the dress there. This pocket is not closed yet. Everything would fall out of it. So what do? Exact. We close it again on with a seam of approximately 1.5 centimeters. And also here I stitch all the way to my seam that I've just done coming down. Otherwise I would have somewhere a hole there in the pocket in that area. That we don't want either. Now you got to look in which direction you stitched the first pocket that you've just done, and that one has got to go towards it. That means that will be your front. Otherwise you got one pocket going towards the back and one towards the front. Well, maybe that would be useful for something as well, I don't know. All right, both of our pockets are totally finished here. So we take the top now, and we can start putting these two pieces together. Now you got to look which one was your front, because the necks were different in the front and the back, as you remember, and the sleeve is different. And you must look, where is your pocket, where is the front? And those are the two pieces you got to bring together, the front towards the front. Check again. Make sure, otherwise you got to open it up later. And start on any side seam. It doesn't matter which one you're starting on. Now in this particular case, as the pocket material, there's quite a bit material lying around. I will lay them seams against each other in a moment. But first of all here I go towards my front middle as I started there. And also here you have, as the sides, you got marks because of the seams. But as this is quite a long stretch, make yourself a little mark in the top and in the skirt, in the back middle and in the front middle. And then it's easy to just join them together that way. So continue slowly all the way there and put the skirt part on the bottom, because the skirt part got a little bit more width in than the top part, and the machine always prefers to pull a little bit, or it automatically does pull a little bit more in underneath with the transporter. That's why I like to put, if I have width like that, I put it on the bottom and I stitch on the slightly smaller part. Makes it much easier in general on any job, besides on sleeves. On sleeves you gotta stitch on the sleeve and not put the width from the sleeve on the bottom. That doesn't work. But on any normal straight seam you do it that way. Put the width on the bottom. There was my middle point again, then maybe you saw that. And I finish off by stitching all the way to the side. And when I get there, I'm afraid I have to go on my overlock again first to clean that edge off, but I think you don't necessarily need to watch that. Just look again here which direction you want to put your seams, so it's getting nice and flat and you can be satisfied with your job. So I just go to the overlock and then continue with you. Back from the overlock, all clean here now. We have to continue doing the tunnel that we need for the elastic band. So I'm just pushing that part inside, and I will put a little guide on my sewing machine on 3 centimeters, because that's the width I want to stitch now. Again, I put the skirt part on the bottom while I'm sewing this, because I mentioned before there is more width in it and I don't want any funny creases in stitching. That's why this is the best way and the easiest way to get the width in evenly on the bottom. Of course, you also have the pocket parts lying there. That means keep on looking underneath occasionally to make sure that you're not stitching any creases in, especially there in your pocket part. Put it down really nice and flat. You can also feel it from the top if it's lying flat or if there's anything funny. So here you are already on the next side seam. There you see my little cut from my middle at the moment there. And I continue all the way to where I started stitching those 3 centimeters all the way through these top and bottom skirt part. Now I put my guide from the machine away, and I first of all show you what the seam looked like from the right side when it's finished. There you go, and you got to now lie this towards the top, upwards. You're lying it upwards, and we're going to stitch through there. That means I'm going to go in from the bottom, because that's my biggest part. From the top it would be a little bit too tight. There you see the seam already. And I start again on the side. But now we have to consider that we got to leave a hole somewhere, because we have to pull our elastic band in. But I decide I'm going to start on this side seam here, and I leave the hole on the other side. And as I know my seam to the right is exactly 3 centimeters there, I will stitch through my top half. I practically have my foot, my pressure foot, running against the edge, as you can see as I put it now, more or less against the edge of my cut material there. And that is my guide, because my other seam is exactly on 3. This is my guide to just stitch through there. So I just start on this side seam. I make sure all the seams are lying the correct way, and I make sure that all the parts are lying flat, also pulled out, not that you get a funny crease in that part in. If you wish, you can use a template to put on top if you think it's pushing or pulling too much. But make sure you're not pulling it sideways. Then you get a funny twist in that tunnel in, which you don't want. It's really got to lie down flat. However you do it, with a template or just like that, it's your decision. Just think about it how you'd like to do it. So I mentioned I want to leave a hole when I get to the other side seam. And I will not leave the hole exactly where my seams are. I'll leave it a little bit earlier, or you can leave it on the other side behind. It doesn't matter. That's also your decision. But I stop right there, and therefore I start again where my seams are, and my hole is now for the elastic band behind. That means now when I go around to this one, I can close the other side up totally, completely, as I only need one hole to get through with my safety pin in a moment. There is my middle point again, you saw that. And I continue evenly through, keep on pulling the material nice apart so everything is really straight and flat. Check where your last stitch is and go over that. Okay, here is the seam. You see that it's nice and flat, and we can now pull our elastic band into this one. Just as well done. There is my huge safety pin. Well, it wouldn't be for any safety with that one, believe me. Okay, pull it all the way in. Make sure you're not twisting it. I got a 1.5 centimeter wide one here, but as I almost got 2 centimeters in the middle, I could have put a 2 centimeter one in as well. That is not necessarily that you would have to have that width in yours. It all depends on how thick you would like to have it underneath, or how wide you want that elastic band. That really makes no difference. That is what you prefer. Got nothing to do with anything. So close this one so it won't open up again. Maybe leave it a centimeter longer. You can always later on, if you leave that hole open, because that's not shown anyway as it's on the left side, you can at any time make it tighter or add a piece if it's too tight. But I measured mine out approximately how I wanted it, and I think that is all right, as I will wear a belt with this one anyway. It doesn't matter now if it's all the way the correct tightness or not. Okay, I'm getting to my next job already. My sleeves are in. They've been cleaned off with the overlock, and I like to do just a tiny little seam on the bottom here. I ironed this over already, which you probably just seen the crease then. And I leave my overlock there shown in that sleeve, as I don't want this seam to be thick on the sleeve part. And I just stitch around the way I've decided in the widths I would like to have this particular seam. That's my first sleeve, of course. I got 2. So where's my other one? There it is. And I do exactly the same with this sleeve now. As I ironed it, it's really easy. Of course, you should always do that. I'm sometimes just too lazy to get up and turn the iron on. That's time. That's why I've done that much earlier on this one, practically after I cut it. On some other parts I haven't done that. But whoever's been watching me before, you know about that, how I work. Make it easier for yourself. Turn the ironing on. Okay, here's my second sleeve done as well. So you see them both there. That's perfect for me. That's good enough for me. All right, now we got to do the bottom of the dress. And this particular one I'd like to do a little bit better. First of all, this is my 1 centimeter seam on the side. If the material would be much thicker, I would cut it in on the top there next to the pocket. But this is so thin here that it just falls over on its own. And on this seam, I don't want to have it open like this. I like to have a nice looking seam inside this dress. That means I once turn it over by 1 centimeter, and then again on 2 centimeters. So I put already my guide there on 2 centimeters, and that's just fine for me. So if you iron this, of course, it would be nicer for you. I'm turning 1 centimeters over and then 2. I measure again, and then my guide takes over the rest, that I exactly go around this seam now. Also on this seam, I would not do this if the material would be much thicker than that. But as I mentioned before, this is a nice, almost silky feeling jersey that I got here. I'm really pleased with this material. It's so nice, feels so nice on the skin. This is something that's so nice about making your own clothes. When you buy finished stuff, you will find they might look nice and you think, oh, I like that dress, I like that coat, and so on. But when you look at the material that some of this stuff is, unless you buy very, very high quality, expensive stuff, but everything that's a half decent price, the quality is so bad. And material-wise, you buy what you want. Now, what I've just shown there, make sure you're not pulling this sideways or get your seam on the bottom twisted. You always got to fold this over in a right angle, and right angle again. Check it that it doesn't pull, that it doesn't twist, because that would spoil your whole dress. We're getting to this bottom. Here on, to my other side of the side seam, which I said to you before, it falls apart on its own. That's why I'm leaving that like that as well. And I continue the same way. I've started 1 centimeter and another 2 centimeter over. And don't just put it flat on a thin material. It looks so much cleaner inside. I know it's mainly you who sees it, but I don't know. Sometimes maybe you're sitting somewhere and it slips over a little bit, and that looks richer, looks better. It's the way tailors should make things. And come on, we're all tailors, ain't we? Yeah, or going to be soon. Yeah, I'm going towards the end of this, and I can tell you now already, I will go afterward when this seam is finished to my ironing board, honestly. I will give it a good steam, and I will put the dress on, and I will show you the results. And I hope I enjoyed you by watching this. I hope you like my tutorials. I hope you come around again. This would really be nice. I'm cleaning my little threads off for my start, which always happens with my machine. And I'm almost finished now. I would say I see you in just a moment when I got this dress on. After I've steamed it, of course. Here I show you again the seam, how nicely it's lying flat, exactly as I wanted it. Okay, I go and get changed, all right?
Okay, here we go. I'm ready to go out. I have a cup of coffee and a nice piece of cake because my dress is finished. My Burda dress, my mini dress. You can make it any shorter you wish, any longer you wish. You got these nice pockets here, having something secretly stuck in the pocket. You got this lovely big neck cut out, and you can make it any kind of jersey material you wish. I hope you liked my video. I hope you come around again, and maybe you try to make this dress for yourself. Bye. See you again.